In this video, I'm going to explain how you form the past tense in Spanish. Okay, so we first need to know what the past tense is in English. The past tense is used to describe actions from the past which are seen as completed or finished. Some examples in English are on the screen. For example, I spoke, I went, I did, we ate. There are thousands and thousands of possible examples. For example, we listened, we did, we danced. Basically anything that is a past tense event of the verb. To create the past tense in Spanish, you must first start with your infinitive. Remember that infinitives in Spanish end with either AR, ER or IR. So before you begin, make sure you have the infinitive form of the verb. On the screen you can see the example hablar, which means to speak. The first step is to remove the final two letters of the infinitive. So in this case, it's the AR from hablar. That leaves us with the stem, which you can see in the middle of the screen in purple, hable. To then create a past tense, we need to add the appropriate ending. So let's imagine, instead of saying to speak, I want to say I spoke. My first step is to remove the AR. And my second step, because I want to say I spoke, is to add an E with an accent, which creates hablé, which means in English, I spoke. So you need to remember it's a two-step process. You first remove the two letters of the infinitive, and then you have to add the correct ending. On the screen now you can see all the endings that you need to know. So there are AR verbs in Spanish, ER verbs and also IR verbs. And each group has a different pattern of what you need to add. So for I, with AR verbs, we add an E with an accent. With ER and with IR verbs, for an I, for yo in the first row, we add an I with an accent. Have a look at all the different endings which are in red on the screen, and you should hopefully notice some patterns. One really good thing about the past tense in Spanish is that you can see all the endings for the ER and IR verbs are exactly the same. So you don't actually have three sets to learn, it's only really two, because ER and IR share the same endings. You can also see some other patterns. For example, in the to row, we've got aste, iste and iste, so they are a little bit similar, as well as with the he and she of the o with the accent, habló, comió, vivió. So there are some patterns which make it a bit easier to memorise these endings, but you do need to memorise them. So you need to remember it's a two-step process. Remove the AR, ER and IR, and then you need to know by heart which of these endings in red you need to add to complete your conjugations. Right, so I have a little bit of practice. So on the screen you've got some conjugations to try. Press pause and try to work them out, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answers. So here on the screen now you can see the correct answers. Beginning with the first one, hablar. I've created he spoke, habló. Then the second one, vivir, with we. I've now created we lived, vivimos. Number 3, the verb to eat, but I want to say I ate, and I've created comí. The fourth one, cantar, to sing, but I've now created cantaron, they sang. And finally, beber, to drink, and I've created the you singular version, bebiste, which means you drank. So for each of these I've used the two-step process. I first removed the AR, IR, ER, and I've then added the correct ending. And when you start out learning this, you can use the table as a reference to know what to add, and then gradually remove the table until you can do it entirely from memory. So you can see there's an interesting thing, a difference between Spanish and English. In English, we can tell who did the verb by the very first word in the sentence. For example, he spoke. He tells me who did it. In Spanish, it's slightly different. It's actually the end of the verb which tells us who has done the action. So in habló, it's the O with the accent that tells me it was he or she. The same with vivimos, it's the imos that tells me it was we lived. So it's a bit of a key difference really between English and Spanish.